I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.
What up, Militia? Mean Joe Grizzly here. And when I'm not trying to avoid a supermoon so I don't turn into a bloodthirsty werewolf, or trying to avoid all the robotic monstrosities created by the Y2K virus, I'm at the Grizzly Cave, watching movies, reading comics, listening to metal, and of course, crushing beers. And on this week, I have a double feature of two low-budget horror films that were released last week, being Werewolves and Y2K. And I was lucky enough for them to be released in my local theater. So I just want to give my thoughts on them, starting with Werewolves. But before we get started, can you please like this video if you like it? And if you like it enough, please subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell icon so you never miss an episode. Also, can you please follow me on all social media platforms so that you can get channel updates, movie news, and all other forms of badassery. Now, let's move on to Werewolves. This is Grizzly Grade Reviews. Taking place a year prior to a supermoon transforming all humanity into werewolves who came into contact with the moonlight, a scientist is struggling to find a cure while also trying to protect the ones that he loves. So right off the bat, I just want to say that when this movie was announced, it completely came out of nowhere. I had no idea that this movie was even being made. And I seen like a article, I think by Bloody Disgusting, that was talking about The Purge meets werewolves, and it's Frank Grillo versus practical effects werewolves. And they had me sold. So right off the bat, I was like, all right, good deal, I'm in. And then I went and seen the movie, and I didn't hate it, but it's not a perfect movie. It's got some problems. Starting off with the positives. So from the get-go, we had to establish what is the glaring positive of this movie. And that is 100% the practical effects. The werewolves in this movie look absolutely amazing. They have the features of several different werewolf designs throughout horror. There's a little bit of inspiration from The Howling in there. There's a little bit from Underworld. There's a little bit from pretty much all different forms of werewolf media. They kind of did a hodgepodge of that. But what separates it is they managed to take these physical pieces of these humans that turn into werewolves, and it comes out in the final werewolf design. For instance, if the person is covered in tattoos, the werewolf is going to be covered in tattoos. One of the big examples is, there's two really good examples. One, there's this character who has like the war paint on his face, and he has like a tactical vest. And when he transforms, he still has the war paint on his face, and he still has the tactical vest on. Another really good one is there's like a heavy metal or a punk rock werewolf where the guy had piercings all in his face and tattoos on his face and stuff, and all those were still present in the werewolf design. So it was really cool to see them do that and give all these werewolves kind of a personality. Now, not all of them have this, but all the ones that you kind of see on screen, most of them have some kind of trait from the person they was before they transformed. And I thought that that was really awesome. There's a little bit of gore in the movie, nothing too spectacular. There's one scene in particular that's kind of brutal, but you could definitely see that they kind of avoided going put too much money into that and put more into the werewolves. And again, it shows that the werewolves are definitely the shining like part of this movie. They're definitely the big draw to this movie. So if you want to see really cool werewolves, this is the movie for you. Also love Frank Grillo. Frank Grillo, like, he's one of the reasons why this movie was sold to me. And ever since I've seen him in Captain America: The Winter Soldier and other movies like The Purge 2, I've always wanted to see that guy like hit it big. And he hasn't quite did it yet, but one day he is, because he's like he would be like a great action star if someone would just give this guy a big role. he would crush it. And I think they squandered him in the MCU as Crossbones because he could have been a phenomenal villain for Captain America to face off to, particularly if they would have just utilized him in the story a little bit more instead of this throwaway villain. I also really enjoyed the world that this movie has kind of set up. The concept itself of a supermoon awakening this genetic abnormality in all humanity and turning them into werewolves upon the moonlight hitting them is a really cool concept. I appreciated that they left a lot of stuff in the dark. Just kind of, it didn't really feel hand wavy. It felt like they were trying to give you like a setup so that they could tell bigger stories later on. And I appreciated that. And I also appreciate the thought that went into all this technology and stuff that they used to try to avoid the moonlight. As corny and cheesy as some of it sounds, I thought it was actually a pretty good idea. Like, they have their own version of sunscreen called Moonscreen. It's like a spray that blocks the effects of the moonlight. They have eye drops that protect your eyes when you're looking in the moonlight. Stuff like that I thought was pretty cool. And also like how they brought werewolves in but didn't like revert back to the old school like werewolf lore. Like, the only way to kill a werewolf is with silver, because in this movie you can definitely kill them without silver. And that kind of like separates it from all those other movies that are kind of modern takes on werewolves. But as I said, the movie is not perfect, and I had a few problems with this movie. One being the acting quality, and this is not a knock on Frank Grillo, because I don't think that the acting is really a product of the actors and actresses themselves. I think it's a product of the bad dialogue writing, because this movie is definitely trying to shoot for that early 90s, 80s style of just ridiculous action movie and just adding in their supernatural elements. This movie would have been a massive hit and a cult classic if it would have came out in the early 90s or late 80s. It's just one of those things that type of movie can be really hard to get into for a modern audience. And I can 100% put myself back into that time period and enjoy stuff like that. But I do think that they went a little too heavy-handed in it. There was a couple of really cringy lines, like there's a scene, and you see it in a trailer, where Frank Grillo gets up on this minigun and just says, "Hey, bite me!
Bite me!"
Too much. That was a little bit too much for me, and there's dialogue like that throughout. There's also this one character that kind of plays his late brother's wife, and that's the family that he is trying to get to when all this goes down. And she just has this dialogue that it's just not good. The whole time she's listening to this, and I want to say that it's a recording of her late husband, like giving her like motivational tips or some kind of like audio message that he left her, and she keeps repeating like, "I am a strong woman, I will protect the house, blah blah," and people don't do that in real life. They just don't. And every time she was on the screen with that dialogue, it kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. The other big glaring issue is although the practical effects werewolves look great, there's a few times in the movie where when they needed to simulate rain, is one in particular, that it was clearly CGI. It was glaringly bad. That kind of stuff I felt like could have been avoided. Just don't have rain, and everything's fine. Like, you don't have to create problems for yourself. And I felt like when they did that, they created this big problem, because if you're like me and you're watching these movies, you're going to see stuff like that, especially when it's like right beside this really badass werewolf and this apparent fake digital rain is falling. And if it's not fake, then that rain just looks like shit on its own, but it definitely looked digital to me. The other thing that and probably my biggest problem with the movie itself is it took this premise of the Purge versus werewolves, or the Purge with werewolves, And I'm not opposed to that idea being like combined together and expanded upon. But my problem is that it kind of did the same thing that the Purge franchise did when it first released. Now, the first Purge movie, I don't find that movie to be bad, but I had the same problem with that movie, as it was advertised as something that was on a bigger scale than what it actually was. It was talking about this whole concept of one night in America. Crime is legal. You can do whatever the hell you want. You can murder, rape, pillage, whatever for one night only. And instead they confined it to a one home, and it was kind of a home invasion movie. They kind of did that with this. Like they gave you this grand idea and this open world that they established right off the bat, and they confined it to a couple of areas. And for me, that was a letdown. And obviously it was because of budget constraints, so I'm trying not to hold it too much against the film, but unfortunately that was a big issue for me. And when that was apparent that was a problem, it also led me to realize that this movie has a lot of problems with giving us stuff we've already seen before. And I wanted this idea to be more unique than what it was. With that being said, I would love for this movie to get a sequel, a bigger budget sequel. I think that if you gave it a bigger budget and you kept it practical effects and you just expanded upon the lore on it, I am 100% willing to watch a sequel to this movie. So for a low budget werewolf film that is a big cheese fest, that is there just for entertainment purposes, that isn't too deep, that has some pretty cool lore behind it and has some great looking werewolves, I enjoyed this movie. I just wanted a little bit more of a grandiose type film out of it. So with that being said, Werewolves gets a 3.25 out of 5, and it's Grizzly grade guaranteed. Now, let's talk about Y2K. On New Year's Eve 1999, two friends are trying to have the night of their life when it comes to an abrupt stop and becomes a night of terror when the Y2K virus takes over all machines and tries to enslave humanity. Starting out very first, the biggest positive for me is this nostalgia factor. And nostalgia is one of those things where people usually like to talk shit about it, but for me, if it's done right, I really enjoy it. And this movie gave me the nostalgic feels. This is the area in time where I was growing up and going to high school and stuff. So all the stuff that was going on in this movie was really hitting home for me as far as the aesthetic and how people talked and all the pop culture stuff that people were liked, and anywhere from they were on AOL using Instant Messenger to the music that was being talked about and sung or being played on the soundtrack to just the outfits and the aesthetic of how people were dressed. That kind of stuff really hit me on those nostalgia feels, and I thought this movie did a great job of capturing that. I thought there was some notable character performances here, one being Gillian Dennison. His character, every time he was on the screen, had me laughing. He was like the life of the party, and his relationship with Jaden Martell's character, their friendship and everything, was something that I could relate to on a personal level when you have that best friend. And I think both of those actors did a great job of conveying that. And I've liked both of them in everything I've seen them in. I've seen more of Jaden Martell because he was in It Chapter 1 and in a few flashback scenes in It Chapter 2, as well as Arcadia earlier this year. And I think that he is becoming one of those actors in horror that you really got to pay attention to. As far as Gillian Dennison goes, I remember him from the Deadpool movie, Deadpool 2, as the one that Deadpool is trying to protect, but Cable's trying to kill because he's going to destroy the entire future. He plays a similar character in this one, but not as dark, obviously. Just a goofy kid that everyone likes to be around. Also, it was good to see Mason Gooding in here. I want that guy to get more roles because I like him in the newer Scream films. I think that he has a future in this industry and in this genre. So hopefully he'll continue to get more roles as his career progresses. Also really like the creature effects in the movie. And it's kind of simple, but complicated at the same time, because the creatures in the movie are like this hodgepodge of different, like, appliances and computers and stuff that's kind of been molded together with wires to form these humanoid type creatures that are controlled by a hive mind with a virus. So, like, you have like vacuum cleaners for legs and toasters for a chest and stuff like that, while they have like an old Apple computer as their headpiece. Stuff like that was cool with me. It reminded me a lot of that movie Virus. I don't know if any of y'all have ever seen that. We're going to cover that one day because I love that movie. It's kind of like where this amalgamation of man and machine. They didn't really go that approach in this movie, but it gave me those feels of these hunks of electronics and tech all molded together and being held together by wires. And it makes no fucking sense how it happens, but nevertheless, I thought that they looked pretty damn cool. I think that the concept where they take this event that happened in American history, this phenomenon that happened, and they kind of expanded upon it and took all the fears that people had back then and kind of put them into this movie was pretty well thought out for the most part as far as the grand idea goes. I never thought that machines were going to kill us, but I thought they were just going to stop working. So to take that fear of machines kind of topic and kind of mold it in here with that, it makes a lot of sense, and I thought they did a pretty good job of doing that in the movie. Also, there is a cameo. This kind of goes along with the whole aesthetic thing and the time period that the movie takes place in. There's a cameo in the movie that's great. I love it. And if you were growing up around this time, you're going to love it too. I'm not going to spoil it. It may have been spoiled in the trailer, but I'm not going to be the one to spoil it here. But let's just say when this person shows up, it's like, fuck yeah, this is awesome. And it kind of hits you right in those nostalgia feels. And to kind of wrap back around to what I was talking about before, we normally get these movies that invoke nostalgia about the 80s or the early 90s. We never get anything from this time period. And I was very appreciated to see that there's a little bit of focus on the late 90s to the early 2000s, because, again, that's when I was growing up. But unfortunately, it's not a perfect movie. There is some problems, particularly in kind of the order of events that things happen. For instance, there are certain characters that get killed off very early, and it kind of just puts a damper on everything, in my opinion. A lot of characters get killed off way too early. There's two of the most likable characters in the entire movie, the ones that were really invoking all the comedy aspect of the movie. They get killed very early, and I don't think that the movie ever really recovers from that. I don't think that it ever gets back to the really good moments of comedy that it actually had in it. It kind of derails it, and there are attempts to be funny, and I just feel like they fall flat after those characters are no longer on screen. Also, the character Jaylen Martine's playing, his character has a crush on Rachel Ziegler's character, and he is the kind of nobody guy that is just there. He's not really an outcast, he's not really a nerd, he's not a popular kid, he's just there. And she is like the real popular girl that people like, but she's more down to earth. She's not like this stuck up bitch or anything like that. She's just there too, but she's really popular and people like her. And I never once bought into their romance. And we see a lot of movies like this where guy likes girl, guy tries to get girl. And I kind of just felt like they took a weird approach with it where it just never hit home with me. I never seen like anything that I couldn't see what he saw in the girl, because they didn't expand on either character very deeply, if that makes any sense. For instance, all the stuff that he says that's cool about the girl, it's kind of just said in this hand wavy way. And that was fine. We didn't have to go super deep into it, but it felt like that we needed a little bit more from her character so that it could really hit home why he likes her. It was just more of like, hey, I like this girl and she's really popular. That's kind of how it kind of came off to me. And I just wanted to see a little more with that. And to go hand in hand with that, it has a lot to do with Rachel Ziegler's performance. Now, she could have very well be written like this, and that's fine. I just want to, with full disclosure, I'm not a Rachel Ziegler hater. I just don't think she's that great of an actress. I don't care about Snow White, and I really don't even know why I had to say that, but her being in Snow White, I don't give a damn about that. Just the movies that I have seen her in, which has been Shazam, Fear of the Gods, and I think I've seen her in one more movie that I can't think of right now, and then this one, she gives a very, very wooden performance. She reminds me a lot of Zendaya. She's the same person in every movie she plays. And I just don't like actresses that are like that. And it's no knock against her personally. She just doesn't bring really anything to the table in this movie. She's kind of just there as a pretty face. And even when they try to make her more relevant and a key to the story, she just doesn't sell it. I've never once buy into that. Overall, I enjoyed the movie. It does have a lot of big problems. It's not a perfect film by no means, and I do think that the movie could have been done better. I think the writing kind of holds it back a little bit. And one thing that was kind of surprising to see is that this was an A24 horror movie. And those of you that are in the know, A24 is it's like the bougie gateway into horror. It's horror movies for people who don't want to call movies horror and enjoy them, if that makes any sense. It's for the people who drink their tea with their pinky out, if you know what I mean. And this does not fit that demographic whatsoever. And I don't know if A24 is trying to go this route with some of their movies so they can get a little bit more mainstream success, but this didn't feel like an A24 movie. This felt like a Blumhouse movie. And with that being said, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I know Blumhouse, I've had my gripes with Blumhouse, and Blumhouse has made me, as a horror fan, shout to the ceiling with joy and also curse the floor with disappointment, because they are the face of horror, and they either are going to put out dog shit or they're going to put out something great, and there's no in between. And if they were to have been the ones that produced this movie, this would have been like one of their only attempts to actually hit that in between, if that makes any sense. But if you grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s, and you were around for the Y2K phenomenon, and you want to see a decent little horror comedy, I recommend this movie. So that being said, Y2K gets a 3.25 out of 5 and is Grizzly Grade guarantee. Well, that does it for this episode. Please like this video, and if you liked it enough, please go and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so you don't miss another release. And also, please follow me on all social media platforms so I can bring you movie news, channel updates, and all forms of badassery. So we got a couple more releases to close out the end of the year. We got Sonic 3, we've got Kraven the Hunter, and of course Nosferatu. Definitely going to be covering Nosferatu. Going to try to cover Sonic and Kraven. We'll see what happens. Also, I'm going to try to get you a Mean Joe video episode out there, and hopefully it's going to be one that I can get done and get released, because it's the 50th anniversary of one of the best Christmas movies of all time, Black Christmas. So stay tuned for all that, and remember, I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.